All right, so the Heat beat the Nets 96-94. Kind of a crazy game. I kind of gave up hope towards the end there. Um, but you never really can count this team out, can you?
No, I mean, I was right there with you. I kind of gave up hope a little bit. You and I were texting back and forth a little bit, Wes, over the course of this game, and I don't know. You look at it, you need a 9-0 run essentially to pull out the W here, and they instead go 13-3 and pull out the win. So never know what you're going to get out of this team, and another heart-pounding but still well fought after victory to advance to a fourth straight ECF.
Yeah, I mean, of course, Ray Allen hits a three at the end. I mean, that had to happen, right?
Yeah, especially against the Nets.
I can't believe that he was that open towards the end of that thing.
I can't believe Chalmers. To be honest with you, I thought he was going to shoot, and I was yelling at the TV like Chalmers pulling up to take it, and then he passed out of it. And I mean,
Well, he was
Ray
about
Allen.
to shoot.
I
And
thought he
then,
was.
I guess
Yeah.
because he hadn't made a shot the entire game, he decided to just pass it to Ray Allen. That and because it's Ray Allen.
I mean, I thought when they made that signing last offseason, I was ecstatic when it happened, solely based on the fact that you look at 2012, Mike Miller and Shane Battier really going off from three-point land to to clinch it in 5 against the Thunder. Then you added another three-point shooter last year. Obviously, you've lost to Miller this year, but you knew when he was coming in, he was going to be something special. I didn't know if he was going to be able to capture a championship for Miami, and of course, he did. You look at it with keeping that series live against San Antonio, and then here he is again, kind of poetic justice for all the animosity that he got from Pierce and Garnett after he left for Miami, and able to send him home with both the three-pointers and the free throws in this game. So, I mean, it's just crazy. It's crazy to think about the storyline that is for Ray, and just another impressive victory overall for Miami to close it out in the final minutes.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a number of things kind of happened in that game. Wade kind of got started in the beginning there. Kind of fizzled out towards the end and got back into it. Nobody was hitting three-point shots until Ray Allen hit the one at the end.
One of like 16 at half, right? Something like that.
Insane. It seemed like they put up like 30 different shots and none of them fell. Chalmers and Cole put up goose eggs each, which that's hard to win when your point guards aren't. Even though LeBron kind of ran the point the entire night, but it's tough when your point guards don't score a point. I mean, that's like you're basically playing 4-on-5 at that point. And the way that LeBron came out and Wade came out, kind of each at separate times, really was the key to that game. At one point, LeBron and Wade were in the game together. And this was after Wade kind of went on that run, and LeBron came back in, and then Wade did that pass out of bounds where he thought it was going to go, probably fade out a little bit, and he didn't, and then a couple of little other miscues, and they pulled Wade and they put LeBron out there with, I think, Rashard Lewis, Norris Cole, Ray Allen, and just a bunch of basically the bench group, and a bunch of three-point, and James Jones was there, so a bunch of three-point shooters, and LeBron, and then they started kind of getting back into it, and they would get into it, they would get within like 3 points, and then the Nets would extend it to 8 points again, and it was just they were there, and then they weren't there, and just somehow towards the end they were able to pull it out, and I guess that's just what you have when you have a veteran team like that, and then against a Nets team that struggled to close these games out, going scoreless for like 4.5 minutes towards the end there.
You told me it was your post-game comments after Game 3, and then, a little bit we were talking during that game, that when LeBron kind of went on that tear to start off the first quarter in Game 3, once he fizzled out, the Miami offense kind of just faded away, and obviously that was the one win that the Nets had in this series. Did you ever think that, the way it started with Wade, that we're going after one guy again, Wade's kind of dominating this contest, once he fizzles out, maybe the offense won't be there as much?
I was a little worried about that, because I like when you see the entire team getting involved when the ball movement's there, and I always feel better about that team. I was actually texting my dad, I think, in game 2, and that was the game where they trailed by 2 or 3 points
Right.
at halftime. And he was like, "What do you think?" And I said, "I actually feel really good about this game. It's gonna be like this, and they're gonna pull away in the fourth quarter." And that was exactly what happened in that game, because you can tell when the ball movement's there and everybody's involved, it's only a matter of time before the Heat as a team, when they're like that, they have the endurance to do it through 4 quarters, and that a lot of teams can't match that. A lot of teams can't
Right.
match that execution for 4 quarters, and so they always end up pulling away. But then LeBron will go for 13 points in the first quarter or something in game 3, and the rest of the team falls back. And I had a worse feeling in that game, even though I think that
Right.
even though I think they were down 1 at halftime as opposed to 3, I still had a worse feeling in that game than I did in game 2. And so I kind of had that feeling going. I didn't feel good about this game. Nobody was able to hit a shot,
Right.
but they were just somehow able to pull it out, just like they were in the last game. They just hit the right shots at the right time. It does worry me, though, going into this next series. Now we have the Wizards and the Pacers playing tomorrow night. I would almost rather play the Pacers at this point than the Wizards.
I went to game what was it? So game 4 last night in Indy. My nephew, he's a huge Pacers fan.
Oh, wow.
Tickets were $19 for Pacers playoff tickets against the Wizards.
Oh my God.
And we were on StubHub watching them drop. They've been like that all season, or not all season, all postseason long. And it just baffles my mind. Wizards tickets, same price value, or same seat value, I guess, so to speak. It's like $92 a pop, and I felt like I was stealing from the Pacers, even though it was a resale ticket.
They don't have any celebrity people going to their game.
And they don't. I mean, it's just, I will say this, like, I've grown up in Indiana my whole life. I've never really been a Pacers guy. I loved Reggie, but I wasn't a Pacers dude. Before LeBron, Allen Iverson was my favorite player growing up.
Okay.
But I've always loved Conseco. I don't know what it is about it. It's just, maybe it's because it's home. But the arena itself, and once they added that Jumbotron in 2 years ago that rivals that of Cowboy Stadium, there's not, in my opinion, a bad seat at Bankers Life. So, I mean, I will say that from an atmosphere standpoint. I mean, Indiana's right up there with Miami and Oklahoma City and Golden State and the Clippers, of just arenas that the fan base is going to participate in those gold outs or red outs, whatever they are. And I've never seen Go ahead, sorry.
No, the Heat fan base was pretty great tonight. It
was fantastic.
And they weren't cheering, but towards the end there, they didn't leave, which was good. That's always a positive sign.
Right.
I guess you can't really get away with that anymore. But they were really cheering on a little bit, and Heat fans understand to be quiet when Ray Allen.
Right. When he's going to the line.
I was really overall. I was not impressed with that game, though. It's tough to be. I had the same feeling after LeBron scored 49 points 2 nights ago.
Right.
The only game where a player scores almost 50 points and the fan base is still like not feeling good about it.
Yeah, and
I get that sense from all the Heat fans.
I think that a personal belief. I think Indiana is advancing mainly because of just the domination of the Marcin Gortat game last night, plus the John Wall game in general. So assuming that it is Indiana that Miami faces, you really saw tonight what can happen to this Heat team if the three-point shots aren't hitting, because they give that respect to those three-point shooters, and it opens up the lane for LeBron. And people will look at this game and be like, man, LeBron really struggled offensively. Well, it's because the Nets defense eventually collapsed with 4 inside the paint, and they knew that these shooters aren't hitting. We don't have to go out there and guard them, which took away those drives that we'd love to see from LeBron. And when those weapons aren't there, this team is vulnerable. And so that's why I keep saying night in and night out, okay, the role players are going to wake up. I mean, you look back and Miami loses this game. Let's just say they dropped it. We're going to a game 6. Bosch had, I think, 16, 15 of which were from downtown. I mean, I love the Kibosh as much as anybody, but you can't rely on Chris Bosh three-point shooting if you're going to go back to the NBA Finals, let alone win another championship.
I have a love-hate relationship with Bosch's three-pointers, and I talk about this and I write about this all the time. He takes them, but he falls in love with them, and he's not as mobile as he is with on the elbow in the mid-range game, he'll put it on the floor. He'll throw in a spin move. He'll put the ball on the ground. But when he's above that three-point line, you give him the ball, and he's cemented there. He's a statue there, and he's either going to jack it up or he's going to pass it up. He's not going to he's not going to pump fake. He's not going to put the ball on the floor. He just doesn't do it. And if you would involve the pump fake and then dribble into that game, and maybe I'm being picky, he just really added that three-point shot this season, so maybe it'll take a moment, but it's just so strange. He's so mobile and agile in the mid-range area, but as soon as he's beyond that arc, he just kind of stands there, and it's the strangest thing to me. So and it turns into a lot of bad shots. But again, it's hard to hate that shot when he starts making them. And he's already got a highlight reel worth of kibosh.
Part of it for me is that I don't think that Bosch has mastered that three yet to the point where he could put it on the deck and then pull up with it. And so he falls in love with that three, like you're saying. And if he doesn't want to drive to the hole, then the only way he can get that three to go down is if it's a catch and shoot. I mean, you look at tonight, I think 2 or 3 were from the corner, and then he had another one, if it was from the left wing or top of the key, I can't remember. I just don't think he's really mastered that. There's a lot of off-season ideas. We're not going to obviously get in that tonight, but a lot of off-season ideas I have that if the big three do re-sign and come back together, a lot of different weapons they could possibly go out and get. That's for another podcast that might even help.
Hey, we can talk about that for a little bit because I always have this vision of Bosch pump faking that three, putting it on the ground, driving in to maybe the top of the free throw line, and then kicking it out to like a flaring Chalmers or Cole or James Jones or Battier or something. But speaking about James Jones and some of these role players, he got some early minutes there. That was a little bit of I think that was the adjustment of the night by Spoelstra, was giving James Jones some early minutes. I thought for a second at the end of that second quarter we were going to see some Beasley, and we didn't. I know a lot of Heat fans want to see Beasley. I still thought Beasley could have been used in that series, maybe when the Nets went their super small lineup and used Beasley at the 4 so he doesn't have to rotate as much on the wings, because that's kind of his issue, why Spoelstra doesn't like to play him, I assume, is because he doesn't know what the hell he's doing when it comes to rotating. But they didn't have to use him. He kind of squeaked it out there. It's going to be interesting to see how these role players play in this next series. If it's the Wizards, they're in a lot of trouble because they're going to demand a lot of role players. They're on the wings there, at least defensively. The Pacers, if they could score over 80 points, we'll see. But
I don't mean to harp on the Wizards. And again, for the record, I think it's going to be Indiana. But I hate being cliche about it. I hate when analysts do it also because it drives me nuts because I'm not a big cliche guy. But after watching this Indiana series, if the Wizards somehow pull it out, and that would involve beating the Pacers 3 straight times, which, I mean, they're inconsistent, but that I can't see that happening in any way, shape, or form. I don't think the Wizards I don't believe they have enough scoring power. I'm not going to go as cliche to say playoff experience because Whitman has pointed out he doesn't believe that. So I don't know. I just don't think they have enough scoring. They're not going to get 30 from Gortat tonight, and Wall's not going to drop 27 each night.
They could get 30 from Nene every night against the Heat.
They could. I don't.
That's an exaggeration, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. I feel you. I don't know. I think you'll see a lot more of Haslam next series, regardless of who it is, because if you've seen Ethan, who writes for the Bleacher Report, I know you're heavily involved with Bleacher Report as well, Wes. He had a breakdown with Haslam that was talking about how he's been able to essentially shut down Big Roy for Indy these last couple of games. And really it's all Haslam's leg strength. I think that's what you're going to see, whether it's Gortat or whether it's Hibbert. Another matchup you're probably going to see. I honestly, for me, with Beasley and Odin, there's got to be something. Maybe it's a chemistry standpoint. They're just all not there when you put them on the floor. I don't know. I mean, with Odin, it's a unique case because I don't think he's 100% up to speed yet to being able to. I think next year if he re-signs that maybe we'll be able to test him out. But with Odin, we'll scratch him. It's just a unique case. Beasley, there's got to be something there that they just don't. Everybody doesn't flow together offensively and defensively when he's out there. I can't fathom why he's not out there.
I think because if you remember Rashard Lewis his first year, didn't really play that much.
Right.
And it's not like he's bad. And
No,
Beasley's not a
exactly.
bad player.
He's a great player.
Starting on, the Suns and stuff, but he's not a bad player.
Right.
He
Right.
could get some minutes, but I think when you have a player like Rashard Lewis, who is essentially a spot-up three-point shooter, and then you have a player like Beasley, who is essentially a go-it-alone type scorer, almost like Joe Johnson, in a sense, in that way.
Right.
And you throw him into a complex system like the Heat, where
It's hard.
very team-oriented, it's a complete change of pace now.
Yeah.
And I think if they do re-sign Beasley, you could see like a Rashard Lewis type plus in minutes there. I think that's all it is. But that's why I was saying if you put him in maybe a more stagnant position like the four, again, the power forward, again, the super small lineup, I think you're not asking as much of him. Maybe just say, look, just stay between the other four and the basket. That's all you got to do.
Yeah.
You don't have to help as much. I mean, there's help all over the floor for the Heat, but it's not nearly as much when you're not playing 1 through 3. And I thought that I thought that was kind of an obvious move, especially if they needed scoring. But they rode James Jones, and James Jones had value, But they also rode Rashard Lewis a little bit, and I know a lot of people were getting kind of upset about that.
A little bit.
He got a lot of his minutes taken away, and he can't hit a shot. I don't remember. Has he scored this postseason? Because
I think he's definitely scored. I don't know how many he has. It's been a while since we've seen it go down, and that's going to be critical. I feel like when we saw the Eastern Conference Finals last year, it was Mike Miller this time. He essentially took over those latter half games, and by took over, I mean he took over Battier's minutes. This next stretch, when this series starts against Indiana, is going to be Battier's chance to come back alive, because I feel like these last two postseasons, we've seen that with Shane towards these latter rounds. He's kind of disappeared, whether it's just, I mean, he really wasn't getting free a lot tonight. I don't think he really got up an attempt from downtown. Maybe these last two games, definitely not tonight. But, I mean, that's going to be critical can he hit, and is he going to be able to fight for those minutes, or are you going to have Rashard and James Jones again eating up those minutes? Both of them are three-point shooters, and if they can hit and keep playing consistent defense, then there's really a lack of minutes for Battier. He's a liability.
And I think Chalmers is going to be a lot more of a factor in this next series, because regardless of who they play, we knew that Chalmers was kind of going to have a tough matchup there with Livingston and Williams and Joe Johnson there. Either of them could be defending Mario Chalmers, and they just have so much more length over Chalmers, and you could tell Mario had a really hard time finding space, getting open shots, getting good looks, and they basically, the last two games, took him off point guard. Chalmers, even on that last possession, he's used as a shooting guard. Remember that last possession in the last game where Bosch hit the game winner? Dwayne Wade was the one that brought it up, and Chalmers was on the wing as a shooting guard and a three-point threat. So that's kind of how he was used, even though he couldn't really hit a shot this entire series. You still got to respect him. He's gonna definitely have a bounce back.
Two things in regard to Chalmers. One, I completely agree with you, and a lot of it is because, and people that don't watch the Heat closely enough might not understand this, and it's funny because they have it programmed into 2K, the video game. They say it all the time. Wade is not a three-point shooter. Mm-hmm. I mean, most Heat people know that. He's not. Like I'm not saying he can't hit it, but that's not his repertoire. He doesn't shoot threes. Chalmers, yeah, when you can afford to do that, to put him out there in the shooting guard slot in those situations, because maybe he's not hitting, but I mean, he has that in his arsenal. Wade's obviously more of an attack the basket or a jump shooter or even post nowadays. I do want to get into that later about the post matchup he might be able to poise against a possible Pacers lineup. But in regard to Chalmers, if you're a Heat faithful and you're looking at his contract, he's probably going to be gone after this year. That being said, assuming he's gone, he is fighting for that payday from another team these next two series. Because if he has an explosive, like not necessarily take games over, but just be a point guard and be a competitive asset to this Heat team like they need him to be in order to advance past the Pacers, this is going to be like an NFL player, if you will, playing for a contract, knowing their contract year is coming up. Because, I mean, it's going to be very interesting to see what the Heat do financially speaking. But I'm assuming Chalmers is probably going to get a payday from somebody after this offseason, and he's fighting for that these next two series. So I really look for him to blow up or step it up these next these next two series.
That's a good point because this is, maximum 14 more games left for him to kind of prove himself.
And it's sad, but
nobody's going to pay him a lot of money if they're just judging it off of this series.
Yeah.
Even though I'm sure they understand that there's a matchup issue there.
Right.
There's people running teams much smarter than we are that probably understand that.
Oh, yeah.
Or in the case of Detroit, maybe not. But, it's Chalmers has got to step it up. But I disagree. I think he's going to be back with Miami.
You think so? I don't think that he won't stay. I'm worried that where the money is going to come from. There's a lot of interesting off-season areas I'm curious about as the season rolls on.
It kind of sounds like the big three's re-signing. It really feels that way at this point. But Chalmers is a bigger question, I think, at this point, because he's got that Udonis Haslem situation from a few years ago where Haslem got twice as much money on the table from the Mavericks, where they could afford to pay him that, and he decided to resign Miami. It might be a similar thing for Chalmers. He might want the money, but if it's $1 million, $2 million, maybe even $3 million more per season, does he take it? Is it worth it to uproot there? Yeah. He's not a veteran. I don't think he's hitting the twilight of his career, but that whole improving thing, not really happening anymore. He is what he is, so nobody's going to be really banking on him, giving him money. There's no future money there. It's just what he is.
Well, speaking of money, one interesting note I do want to ask you about. You look at these contracts again, and I know we kind of want to focus on the next round of the playoffs, but the big question mark that I've been debating with a lot of people is you look at Wade's contract. If he opts in, he has potentially the last payday of his career coming his way. I think it's like he has $20 million next year, something along those lines if he opts in. It might be that way with the entire Big Three, but for some reason everybody's making a big deal about Wade and the fact that he can opt in for that last payday. Again, I haven't looked at everybody's contract. I did the last night, but I can't remember if it's that way for everybody. Do you see, depending on the way Wade wants to go, that he's going to opt in for that $20 million, or do you expect an opt-out by everybody and then restructuring of those deals for the Big Three?
Well, I think Wade is more of an opt-in candidate because at this point, I don't know if he wants to test the open market. He might be scared by what he sees on the open market. I mean, there's not a lot of great two guards in the NBA, but if you're looking for a two guard that's going to basically play half the games in the regular season, you logically would pay that player half as much as a max player that plays half the games. You might pay him $10 million a season. He might opt in just because he's not going to get any more money on the open market. But at the same time, if he wants to be winning, and that would be the assumption, that's the reason these guys came together. If you're with that assumption, then he would opt out in order to take less money and put more players around him in order to chase another championship. So if all these guys opt out and take 14 or 15 million, which seems to be the sweet spot there, and what you would expect Pat Riley to kind of convince them to do, say, you're at 17, 18 right now, opt out, take 14, 15, and we can go get you Trevor Ariza. We're going to go get you Pau Gasol. I mean, we can even they could technically go for Carmelo Anthony if they all go for 13, 14 million.
You know who I really want? This is just a dream. I don't know if we're supposed to be talking off season right now. If that all happens, I believe he's a free agent this year. I could be wrong on that. I want him to bring Kevin Love in. I really do. If you all opt out and you restructure your deals, is it next year?
That's next.
Is it next season? It is next season. Okay.
But here's the other thing: is that what if Bosch opts out, right? And he says, you know what, I'm sick of being third wheel. And I wrote about this. I can't remember if it was for allyoucaneat.com or for Bleacher Report, but I wrote it for somewhere. If he opts out, then Miami does take an immediate hit next year. But that also they can also sign a guy or a few guys to kind of replace his role, maybe to one-year deals. And then next summer, when guys like Russell Westbrook and Kevin Love are available, they can go chase those guys. Yeah, and that's something that I haven't heard anybody talk about, really, because if one of those guys opts out, that's a whole other opening you have for next summer. And so the Heat might be able to lull for one season, and just kind of play it out, still go for a title with LeBron and Wade and maybe a bunch of different role players, kind of a mismatch of people. But
does Love have the ability to opt out, or is he locked in for a whole other year?
I think it's an opt-out for next summer.
It is? Okay.
And the expectation there is that
See,
he's opting out, but I'm not positive about that.
okay.
But the Heat
That's why I've been confused throwing his name around because, I mean, at first, I mean, I've heard the Melo theory, which, I mean, the more I've talked about it with close friends, I don't know how well that would work.
It'd be a bad fit in Miami. It wouldn't work. He wouldn't fit in. He's a great scorer. It would be ridiculous to pass him up in a sense. It would be almost cartoonish in a way to say, no, we don't really want you, Carmelo Anthony, one of the best scorers in the NBA. But I make the case that I would rather have, instead of a $14 million per season Carmelo Anthony, give the $7 million a year to Trevor Ariza and another $7 million a year to Rodney Stuckey. And
it'd be fun to have Trevor Ariza.
Somebody else.
It'd be cool.
And yeah, I mean, if you can kind of, Battier's done.
Yeah. Ray Allen, I think, is going to retire if they win. I think if they win, I think Ray retires. I really do.
Yeah, I agree. I think that'll be it. And then you have a lot of people to replace. I feel like you can't just plug in Carmelo Anthony there and just say, yeah, that'll work. It's especially with the amount that everybody. Bosh might only get like 3 shots a game if Carmelo Anthony is on the floor. I think he would demand a trade if it would be insane. It would just be ridiculous.
Oh man.
So yeah, I mean, I kind of think the Pacers are going to win. I think you're right. Asking the Wizards to win 3 straight against Indiana is insane.
I mean, it'd be nice, but I don't know.
Fans, as much as you know what? If any team is going to lose 3 straight, it's going to be the Pacers.
I have a theory, and I tweeted this earlier in the night at halftime, and partially in rage because I was just so frustrated at what I was seeing. I feel like it might be a battle of if Miami. I mean, they've shown me once again when I've doubted. I just need to stop doubting and just accept the fact that okay, they're going to find a way to win this game. But up until the final 2 minutes of tonight's game, I felt like the Eastern Conference Final is going to be a series of who does not want to advance because both the Pacers and the Heat, I mean, the Pacers have been more media-driven because they were the 1 seed. They talked all that hype to begin the year, and they're in a worse situation, I think, than Miami. But they've both kind of been a little bit inconsistent here and there, at least in this series. Not with the Bobcats. Heat took care of business. The Hawks just gave horrible matchup woes to the Pacers. But I don't know. I mean, if the Heat have nights like this or the Pacers have nights like they had last night, you could very well see a 7-game series out of this. And I know a lot of Heat fans would like to see business taken care of in 6 back at American Airlines.
All I'm thinking of is the NBA Finals. Assuming for the sake of argument that the Heat make it to the Finals, are they going to be able to keep up with the 8 or 9 players that the Spurs are going to throw out there? The 8 or 9 players that the Clippers are going to be able to throw out there? That's
am I the only one on Team Thunder right now? Because that's the best matchup for Miami. I mean, not that they can't win against either of those teams, but I think my order of possible opponents, if you make it to the Finals, is Thunder, Clippers, and then Greg Popovich Fountain Youth Spurs. So
I think the Thunder would be the best matchup for Miami in a strange way, and I think a Heat fan naturally roots against Oklahoma City. And that's what I found myself doing a little bit, pulling for the Clippers last night. And then I'm thinking to myself, I don't want to play the Clippers. Why? Paul on Mario Chalmers would be horrible. Blake Griffin and DeAndre Jordan, that front line, that would be a really difficult matchup. Now you're not dealing with one post player like the Spurs have with Tim Duncan and no post players like the Thunder. Serge Ibaka does not count as a post player. Kendrick Perkins does not count as a player. So now you would be dealing with 2 post players with the Clippers. I'm most scared of the Clippers, especially because they have a deep bench. You just kind of have this feeling that Danny Granger or Crawford or somebody on that bench, Barnes for goodness sakes, would just go off for a game here and there. I mean, Crawford scares me in that matchup for sure because the Heat don't really have anybody on the second unit that matches up with him. They're deep teams. I think you're right. Thunder are the best matchup for the Heat just because Durant on LeBron just kind of cancel them out, right? And then you have to worry about Westbrook, but everywhere else on the floor, and you also have the coaching matchup. Spoelstra over Brooks every single time.
Yeah, Another thing that I don't know. I've never had animosity for either Durant or Paul George, and maybe it's because of the fact that they're always so friendly with everybody. Like LeBron's always, or Durant and PG so far these last 2 summers have been friendly with LeBron in the offseason. And that animosity that I have for, say, Paul Pierce, for example, say KG, for example, it's not there. I mean, the Pacers, that's a whole other story. But the Thunder, I don't know. I don't have a huge hatred for them. There's not really a rivalry there for me other than the Durant-LeBron comparisons. The Spurs, they just baffle me because they're essentially, I mean, the Spurs obviously, when you look at it from a talent standpoint, or maybe not a talent standpoint, but they're not the big media markets of media or of Miami or Los Angeles or New York or Boston. They're like a perfected version of what the Pacers want to be, just an incredibly deep team that just doesn't make a lot of mistakes, plays hard defense, ugly games, and they pull it out at the end. They've been a thorn in my side forever. I can never fathom how they do what they do. I respect it. I just can never fathom it. It's pure team basketball, and a lot of people love that. I don't have a problem with it. It's bizarre that they're always there again. I really thought they were done after the last finals, and yet here they are once again knocking on the doorstep of a possible return and rematch against the Heat. And it's just, I don't know. I really think that I'd be ecstatic if the Thunder made it to the finals, but at the same time, I don't think they can beat the Spurs. The one year they beat the Spurs was when James Harden was there, and they just went off on every cylinder, especially from the perimeter, in that series to close it out and knock off the Spurs. And I don't see Oklahoma City being able to punch them out.
It's going to be tough, Harden, as much as he's kind of opened up his game and kind of taken over the Rockets, when he was at the Thunder, he kind of was the anti-cocaine to that Westbrook team.
He was the remedy.
Go insane, and Harden would kind of come in, run the point a little bit, kind of calm things down there, and they would have almost the semblance of an offense there. And now it's just a Westbrook and Durant show. The Spurs, I mean, you've seen the movie Pulp Fiction, correct?
Yes.
So the Spurs always remind me of Pulp Fiction. It's just a lot of different things, a lot of ugly stuff going on. You can watch it a million times, and it's the same great movie, and you know how it's going to end, but it's a lot of different things going on, and somehow it all gets there. The Spurs is just like watching a lot of different things going on with all their different units that they run, with all the different kind of plays that they run, their side pick and rolls, their hammer plays, everything that they do, but you know what they're going to do at the end of the game. They're probably going to win, and they're going to win in a certain way with Parker and Ginobili and Duncan on the floor. They're just like watching a good movie over and over again because they always look the same, and that's just the way they are. The Thunder, on the other side of that, they look different all the time, but you know what you're expecting. You're getting Westbrook and Durant, and it's how those two are playing together. It's how cracked out Westbrook is, or it's how hot Durant is. It's going to kind of dictate that game. And the Clippers, Doc Rivers has done such a great job with that, and that's what I think worries me as a Heat fan. I would rather go against Scotty Brooks than have Spoelstra coach against Doc Rivers or Spoelstra coach against Greg Popovich, because Doc Rivers putting Chris Paul and Durant was a stroke of genius. That's something that's right out of the Popovich playbook. That's right out of the Eric Spoelstra line of thinking. I'm hopeful that Spoelstra would think of something that clever. And so all these different lineup changes and the unpredictable matchup situations that those three coaches put together, I don't think there's any doubt that those are the three best coaches in the NBA right now, with the way that they're modernizing the NBA and making it positionless and just playing whomever they want to throw out there and making it work. Putting a 6'2" Chris Paul on a 7-foot Kevin Durant and making it work. That, to me, is the biggest thing. And going forward, and it was already kind of a chess match between Kidd and Spoelstra, and I think that was really interesting. I mean, there's so many different rotations and lineup changes and matchup issues that they would each throw at each other, whether it be Teletovic or Sean Livingston in the post, or LeBron James, playing the 4 against Pierce for most of the game, or then throwing him at Joe Johnson. There's so many different things, and that was such an interesting part of this final series.
One thing that's kind of interesting to me, especially when you look at that Nets series, I mean, the 3 ball was dominant in that Game 3 win for Brooklyn. And when the Miami Heat defense just wasn't there, completely didn't show up to that game 3, it really, really killed them. The team I think of that is just a pure copy almost, but 110% better is, the Spurs. They have a lot of talent, whether it's Bellinelli or whether it's Danny Green, whoever it is from downtown, Boris Diaw even, which still just is head-scratching to me. No disrespect to Boris Diaw. Popovich finds these guys, and it's like he makes them into championship heavyweight fighters, and it drives me crazy.
You look like a guy like Tiago Splitter. He's making like $14 million a year now with this new contract or something crazy. Like, I don't know what it is, but it's something close to that. Any other team, he's like a $6 million a year player. Yeah.
If Popovich ever gets his hands on any of the Plumlees or the Hansboroughs, the world's going to end, because apparently he can just take anybody he wants and make them into superstars. Tiago Splitter, you're exactly right. Anywhere else in the league, he would, I don't know. He'd probably be, no offense to Karolinko, but, I didn't really follow Karolinko very much when he was in Utah, I think it was. Or Utah or Minnesota, I can't remember off the top of my head. But,
Splitter could be, the backup center in Portland, Joel Freeland. What's the difference between Joel Freeland and Tiago Splitter?
Jeff Withey.
Right, exactly. You can throw one of those guys on the Spurs, and then bam, he just
superstar.
Splitter. That's not. No disrespect.
No disrespect at all.
Ball system. He could play the center and the 4 spot, and kind of is able to relieve Duncan in that sense, and so he's very valuable in that way. And there's valuable defense behind Duncan, so he doesn't have to do as much, and they're both on the floor together. It's amazing that Popovich finds these guys, and I think that's almost the next step for this Heat team, is finding guys, maybe not going after big names like Battier and Rashard Lewis and Ray Allen in free agency, but maybe finding Danny Green or Tiago Splitter, those next guys, the next Teletovic, those kind of guys that you just never heard of, and then all of a sudden they blow up for your team and they just serve a valuable purpose. Pat Riley has said before he doesn't really believe in drafting guys or finding young guys. He wants to hit that sweet spot 5, 6, 7 years in the league and to grab those veteran guys who still have a lot of good years left, and that's why I expect them to go after Arizas and Stuckey.
It'd be nice. It'd be really nice.
It would be. I think Ariza. I think every Heat fan is.
I hadn't even thought about that. For some reason, I thought about Kevin Love. I thought he was still available this year, but assuming he's off the table, then I've really been pleased with what I've seen from Trevor Ariza this year, especially in the playoffs in Washington. But that being said, though, assuming it is Indiana advancing, where do you see this series going? Obviously it's going to be another matchup, which I think it was Ethan on Bleacher Report. He mentioned that it might have been him. It could have been another Heat writer, but I believe it was him that said, would it really have been as fun or as gratifying if it wasn't Miami to be able to knock out Indiana? And it probably wouldn't have been as fun, but it would have been a little easier. So here we are again.
I think even with the way the Pacers are struggling, you ask a Heat fan if they're scared of the Pacers, if they say no, they're lying. There's got to be a little bit of anxiety.
Oh no, I especially growing up here, I really am. I respect the Pacers enough to say that this is the team. If any Eastern Conference team, when you looked at those playoffs, regardless of how bad the Pacers played, and I do agree with some of the analysts that they fooled a lot of us when we think they're back. I really thought every other cornerstone that had ever been talked about these last 2 months was complete garbage until their win in Washington. I really thought that was a corner for them. And then sure enough, they get out-rebounded by one of the worst margins in NBA playoff history, and they get their lowest rebound total in franchise history. So I don't know, I don't know what we're going to get from them, but I've been scared of them all year in the sense that they could potentially push Miami to 7. And I think it'd be a great defining moment for LeBron's career and the Big Three legacy to win on the road in Game 7. But they've won once in Baker's life in the last 2 years, and that was, I think, Game 5 last year in the playoffs. And it is a tough place to play, especially if the Pacers bring their A game. It is an insane environment. one of the loudest buildings in all the NBA, and it's tough. But I don't know. Well, where do you see, assuming that series is what we see, where do you see us going?
The Pacers and the Heat are both worse this season than they were last season. I think that the Pacers are a lot more inconsistent. But then again, you look at what the Pacers were doing in their first 2 rounds before they advanced to the finals. They looked not great. They weren't garbage. But there wasn't the same expectations. You can kind of pull these points and how much they're scoring and what's kind of going on. The rebounding numbers would be different. They were out-rebounding the Knicks in almost every game, I think. But you look, there wasn't the expectations there, but there was a few games where they scored like 76 points in the entire game. Now they have the spotlight on them. They have the experience, and they have the expectations that surround them. So now we kind of analyze it a little bit more. So they could really just go back into the finals and do exactly what they did last year, kind of squeak by those first 2 rounds and end up just taking advantage of a matchup in the Eastern Conference Finals. Hibbert, though, is just not right, and if he's putting in that performance, and Haslam who basically got this entire series off, was terrific for the Heat. They were able to basically leave Haslam out of it. He's got all this rest. Battier's got a lot of rest. Both of them play huge matchup roles for the Heat. Battier on West, and Haslam on Hibbert. That, I think, would work in their favor. It's just a matter of some of these perimeter guys hitting their 3-point shots and LeBron James getting the better of Paul George.
Sorry, go ahead. Good.
They need basically 20 points from Stevenson, 20 points from Paul George this year for them to win a game in the playoffs. And if they don't get that, they're basically done.
Two notes for all that. One, the big 3 are what's going to win Miami the series. Sorry, let me rephrase that. I knew I was going to mess that up. The big 3 are what's going to win Miami the games in the series, but to close it out and advance to the finals, it's going to come down to that second unit. It really, truly is. Whether you're putting Wade in the second unit, LeBron in the second unit, or both of them together in the second unit, that is where you're going to be able to try to take advantage of Indiana, mainly because I really liked what I saw post-wise for Dwayne Wade, and if he's able to draw a matchup from, say, C.J. Watson or George Hill, depending on who's all on the floor, if he's able to have a matchup like that one-on-one, I implore him to go in the post time in and time again, because he just had some beautiful post moves against the Nets, and I really think that's a matchup he can take advantage of. But the second thing is, I really think you need to eliminate Big Roy from Game 1. Because if you don't knock him off, if you give him confidence in Game 1, I know he's been shaky, but I don't know. I have a soft spot in despite the fact that he drives the Heat fans nuts because of he's just that big stoic presence in the lane, ready to deny anything that comes in there. I genuinely think he's good enough on the defensive end, and he's strong enough offensively that if he can get going Game 1, it'll carry over for the rest of the series, and Miami can't have that because it's true. They don't have a player other than Haslam or maybe Odin if we see him again, which I really don't think we will, that can match up against him.
Yeah, Hibbert already is going to have some confidence going into the series anyway because of his, past successes against Miami.
Right.
If you let him get into it Game 1, he's going to just
It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough.
Let's close that out on this. I think the Nets kind of figured out, we're talking about these role players, they kind of figured out what to do against Miami, and that is kind of eliminate the role players. Close really hard on the three-point shooters. You notice that Chris Anderson wasn't involved on the offensive game. They took away those backdoor cuts. They really crowded those passing lanes for the 5 games. They did a really good job basically saying, we're going to have the big 3 beat us. And considering how Wade has been on and off and Chris Bosh has been on and off, it's basically saying LeBron's going to have to beat us. We're going to take away his passing lanes. We're going to make him score 49 to beat us. That's kind of scary. And I don't think the Pacers don't have the athleticism that the Nets do in order to take away the wings from Miami. And I think you're going to see Chalmers, Cole, Battier, all those guys have much better series against them, or even the Wizards for that matter. The Wizards have good wing defenders. I just don't know that they're as good defensively. as the Nets, at least in that sense of taking away the passing lanes and things like that. But that, I think, is going to be the formula, and I think the Spurs did a little bit, and the Nets figured it out a little bit there, and I think that's what really hurt Miami.
Two final notes I do have before we, if that's a transition that you're going towards closing it out. I thought so. I just want to make sure I wasn't on the wrong page with that. One, I don't agree with Charles Barkley, rarely ever, but one thing he said the other night, as cliche as it was, I kind of agree with it. It is extremely difficult to beat LeBron times. That's what you have to do to knock Miami out. You have to beat one of the most aggressive competitors in the game right now 4 times to send him home.
Right.
That's a challenge to do. I don't know if we're doing this right now, but just to put it out on the record, I'm saying Miami in 6. Regardless of who they play, well, actually, that's not true. If they play Indiana, Miami in 6. If they play Washington, I have no idea because they would have home quarterback, if I'm not mistaken. But if it's Indiana, like I think it's going to be, Miami in 6, close it out back at American Airlines. I genuinely think that even if it's going to be the fierce, competitive, possible 7-game series, I think that beating LeBron 4 times is something extremely difficult. And if there's any team that would be fitting enough to knock out the Pacers and send them back to Banker's life, hoping and praying for some new movements in the offseason, it would be the Miami Heat, LeBron James.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm looking ahead to the NBA Finals.
I am too, but I'm trying to sell it with the poker face that
sure.
focus on the finals.
All right, let's wrap this thing up. Thanks for watching this, either if you're watching live or if you're going to watch this later on. This gets posted automatically to YouTube. Check out the blog, allyoucanheat.com. We also do some podcasts. Check that out on iTunes. You can also find that at allyoucanheat.com. Follow us on Twitter at FansidedHeat. The J Cook 95.
Well, it's just at the J Cook on Twitter if you're looking to follow me for some Heat news. So.
Okay, so the J Cook on Twitter, and then I'm WC Goldberg on Twitter. Thanks for watching, and yeah, we'll try to do this again sometime.
A lot of fun.
All right, thanks, Jimmy.